Now, this next segment is called a game changer. Now, I'm aware that recently people have been overusing that term, game changer, but in this case, it definitely applies. Not only did this company literally change games, but they changed so much more. The spirit of this award is, you've changed how we viewed or experienced the world, and there's definitely no going back. Please welcome John back onto the stage, oh, you're over there in the corner, to help us introduce this award.
Okay, I'm back. I didn't expect to be doing 2 awards tonight, but I got to tell you I'm very happy that I have this opportunity to do so. Okay, so now, Game Changer Award. Not all technology, products, or services are created equal. Some are nice to haves, while others change the world in such significant ways that we can no longer conceive of how it was before their arrival. The winner of this year's Game Changer Award was called out by the Academy for building the foundation of today's artificial intelligence ecosystem. This company's invention of the Graphic Processing Unit, or GPU, in 1999 sparked the growth of the personal computer gaming industry, redefined modern computer graphics, and revolutionized parallel computing. More recently, GPU deep learning ignited artificial intelligence. This technology will power the next era of computing, with the GPU acting as the brain for devices, robots, self-driving cars that can perceive and understand the world around them. This company, so deserving of the 2018 Game Changer Churchill Award, is of course Nvidia. Please welcome Colette Kress, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, as well as Mark Stevens, Managing Partner of S-Cube Capital, investor and current Nvidia board member, to the stage to accept the award for Nvidia. Get the right little. Congratulations, Colette. Mark, thank you. Hey, this is for you too.
Oh, picture first?
You should hold the. One of you should hold that.
We'll hold it together. It's really heavy.
Yeah.
Over this way.
Oh, not that one.
Okay. Good job.
You got it. Okay.
I'll sit here.
We'll put that guy right there.
Okay, this is a different forum for us.
Yes, it is.
So normally Mark and I are together in a couple board meetings.
That's right.
Currently he serves on our audit committee as well. So we spend quite a bit of time together on this. So let's see if we can maybe change the discussion
format,
just
sure.
a little bit. So this month I celebrate my 5 years with NVIDIA. You might have been here just a little bit longer working for NVIDIA. I think closer to 20, 25 years?
25 years. Well.
25 years. So I might see NVIDIA just a little bit differently than you do.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So the company actually celebrated its 25th anniversary in April. So it's 25 and a half years. And I've been on the board for 23 of those years. I was one of the original board members when Sequoia did our Series A investment. And then in the 2000s, I jumped off the board for a while, and then Jensen convinced me to rejoin. So I couldn't resist. So I've been back on the board now for, I guess, almost 10 years. But yeah, I mean, back in 1993, Nvidia was a very contrarian investment for us at Sequoia. Those of you around the Valley at the time, there were several graphics chip companies that had been financed and started at that point. Names like Cirrus Logic and S3 and 3DFX, and there were probably 10 other names I can't think of right now. And when my partners and I were introduced to Jensen, actually through Jim Gaither, who's also a current NVIDIA board member. Jim was a attorney at Cooley Godward at the time. We initially were very skeptical because here's this 30-year-old guy and his 2 co-founders who are about the same age, Chris Malachowski and Curtis Preem, who had this vision to start yet another graphics company. And we scratched our heads a bit. But what convinced us to invest was that their vision was to bring 3D graphics to the masses. At that point in time, if you think about the early personal computers, you only could do 2D graphics. It was pretty rudimentary. And the vision that Jensen and Curtis and Chris had was to, why can't PCs look like a silicon graphics workstation with all the 3D accoutrements that a silicon graphics workstation had? And so that was the vision of the company, and it was a differentiated vision. And so we invested, and the original two investors in Nvidia were Sequoia Capital and Sutter Hill Ventures, and we each put $1 million in. This is back in the good old days of the Valley. Today a Series A is $20 million. Okay, this was a $2 million Series A, and so the company in a lot of ways was a classic company at its start, but it was controversial. You had to have a very contrarian point of view of how the personal computer market was going to evolve to make this investment.
So if I remember some of the first days when I had started at the company, they loved to talk about the history quite a bit about the company. And remember, starting as the CFO, the first thing you kind of look at is the balance sheet, and you kind of look at how much cash you have just to make sure everything is going to be okay. And I would hear stories after stories of the days that they almost ran out of money, and we only didn't have enough to pay this and pay that. And I started to look and maybe got a little bit of worried starting on that just says, I think we have a little bit of cash. Are we really on the way to out of business? But help us understand a little bit back then in terms of what that was like.
So the company, we financed the company in 1993. The company went public in 1999. But along the way, we came within probably a month of going out of business at least 3 times. And therefore, Jensen Huang, the founder and CEO, still to this day, likes to say in board meetings, and you've heard this many times, that we're a month away from going out of business. Because the reality was back in the 90s, we were a month away from going out of business for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes we had a production problem with our fab partner. We couldn't get enough supply. And back in the 90s, we were selling chips, graphics chips, to PC manufacturers, to Compaq and Dell and HP and so forth. And if you didn't get your chip designed into their PC that was due for the back to school cycle or the Christmas cycle, you were toast, right? And so Jensen we literally almost went out of business a few times. And that mentality, I think, still permeates the company to this day, even though how much cash we have on the balance sheet right now.
Okay, maybe $8
billion, something like that.
A little bit.
But the company, we still have that sort of mentality of, hey, we could still go out of business.
So a lot's changed, though. Yeah. We have to think back in terms of the discussion that is, yes, a gaming company, really focused on bringing high-end graphics to the gaming world today, and we all know that. The gaming industry has changed astronomically over this period. Sometimes we try and look at it in the fact that we probably were pretty influential in terms of creating the market that we see in terms of gaming. Right now, what you may have remembered from your early years is playing a game with your computer inside the bedroom, and that would be your entertainment. But right now, it's a social platform. You know the thousands and thousands of people that are online together to socialize while playing the overall games. The graphics no one would probably ever believe in terms of how they have evolved over time in terms of truly, truly realistic. The overall GPU has been instrumental in a lot of that pieces. But that's only one part of our business. Right. And as we spoke in terms of here, it's really not what a lot of people continue to think about us. Yes, 5 years ago when I started, there was it's a PC company. Right. It's a chip company. It's a chips and dips company. Right. What are you going to do?
Yeah. No, I think that's, you've been at the company 5 years and you've seen this meteoric growth. But we're not a chip company anymore. I think it's not an exaggeration to say that Nvidia probably is the most important computer company in the world today. Just like IBM was the most important computer company back in the 70s and 80s. And we've become a fully integrated company. If you look at, we talk about this in our meetings where, we have customers in robotics, we have customers in the transportation industry, we have customers in the medical industry. We have customers across all different industries. And so, we're not a gaming company anymore solely. I mean, surely gaming is an important part of our culture, and it's a core part of our business, but we've really become a true global computer company, which I think the world is realizing now, but it's taken, well, at least 5 years, maybe longer.
At least 5 years, but what's interesting, I think, is probably one of the most fundamental decisions that Jensen and the company took was probably more than 10 years ago, which at the time people thought the decision was a crazy idea, which was actually adding a sense of a computing programming language on top of every single GPU and investing in teaching through laboratories, through research, through schools, how to program an overall GPU. At the time, people said, how big could that be?
Right.
How big of a market could that be, and why would you want to do that?
Right.
Really, his overall vision was absolutely instrumental that says, no, this overall GPU, although serves an application for graphics quite well, the reality is it's an amazing processor. Right. That processor has a tremendous use outside of just the application of graphics. Right. So providing that to overall developers to where we are today with more than 1 million developers who develop on the GPU is astronomical. But at the time, nobody saw that piece and being instrumental to where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, you're referring to CUDA, which is our programming platform. And it was controversial at the time. And it was a big investment. I mean, the numbers, the headcount numbers better than I, but we have more software engineers at Nvidia on a worldwide basis than hardware engineers. And we've put a huge investment into software in the last 10 years, and we're beginning to see the fruits of that. And now with CUDA, we have thousands of young programmers. It's taught in most of the major engineering schools in the country and around the world. And so every year we have thousands of people trained on the CUDA programming platform and that are ready to program on our GPUs when they, go work for Tesla or go work for GE or what have you. So it was a real game changer for us.
So that game changer probably led to kind of the next big piece. We saw an opportunity as things changed in the world of computing, whereas Moore's Law actually became a significant slowdown. And people are really looking for a form of what we refer to as accelerated computing. That says you need to get more computing out of our overall infrastructure, and you need some other source. And moving the actual workload from a CPU serial processor to an overall GPU and parallel processor was instrumental. But the key thing was we chose some key markets that were essential to be able to use that overall GPU. You see us very front and center, and many people focus on our data center business. But we have chosen these markets very carefully. One, because we know that they are extremely large markets in front of us. We also know that there are tremendous challenges in terms of achieving the overall size of the markets that are in front of us, and we have that tenacity as a company to stick that through and work through it.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of getting maybe too technical here, it turns out, to do graphics, you're drawing lots of triangles and polygons onto a screen, so it's very compute intensive, and it takes, to do that, you need massive amounts of computing power, and it's hard to do that through a single threaded CPU, through a single pipeline. But with a GPU, you have multiple pipelines and multiple processors, and you can splash those triangles, render those triangles onto a screen much faster. And so we knew that, and then we had CUDA, and then the breakthrough of maybe 7 or 8 years ago through our Bill Daly and some of our scientists came up, what we realized was that, hey, for artificial intelligence, you throw massive data sets at a computer, and if you have multiple processors and multiple threads, those data sets can be processed much more efficiently than if you're using a single CPU from a company like Intel, for example. And so that was the next big idea that has transformed the company. Because now all of our hardware is based on a common architecture. And so the GPU we develop for the gamers is the same GPU that gets used for the folks in the auto business or for the medical business or what have you. And so we have this sort of common architectural thread throughout our product line, which gives us tremendous efficiencies in how we execute our business model, as you well know.
Yeah, so the data center business is filled with a significant amount of opportunity as we think about this world of AI. And there's been just a tremendous match of the GPU with overall AI. But what I think also came about probably a couple of years ago, more than 5 years ago, was the focus of where else you can use that AI, which is self-driving cars. Now, that is still a large market in front of us because we all know that overall transformation of the transportation industry is upon us. You see it every single day of more and more technology arriving in terms of in the cars, but also how we will transact the overall transportation worldwide, whether that be trucking, whether that be taxis, and the need of a autonomous vehicle will probably be essential. So help us understand what you see in terms of bringing that to market and how we helped.
Well, I think in terms of the autonomous vehicle market, it's happening. It's probably happening faster than people think because the technology is happening so quickly. But it will, you think about autonomous vehicles, it's really it will transform society in a sense, right? Because if you have autonomous vehicles, presumably they're a lot safer because you don't have humans driving them. What does that mean? Well, it means the whole auto insurance business model gets changed. You probably need fewer law enforcement officers in the street because there's fewer accidents. You need fewer repair shops. I mean, the whole idea of urban planning, I think, gets changed. How you design cities get changed. You don't need these 5-story parking lots, maybe because you won't have people owning cars. You share cars and they're autonomous. So you think about the implications of AI and deep learning across different industries. My favorite example that I always like to cite is we have a customer, and the name escapes me, you might remember. We have a customer, I think they're in Boston, and they're using Nvidia's technology to read cancer radiology scans a lot more efficiently. And we're not replacing the radiologist, but we're making that radiologist much more efficient with much higher accuracies. And so and we haven't even touched the medical market. I mean, it's very nascent right now for us.
It's very true. If you go into the medical space, and if you actually go in for any type of scan that you have, any type of radiology, you may be in there for several hours. Just take a look and behind the actual scanner, as well as when you get back to the radiology showing you that, that's all Nvidia technology. What we hope to do is, because of the significant decentralization of that information, is to be able to pull that together and be able to run AI on it, that the human eye is not the only looking at it to determine whether or not it is cancer or whether or not there is a problem, that through millions and millions of looking at these scans in the past, you can tell from computer generated doing there. So I think there is within us as a company as well, not only a focus on big markets that can monetize well, but there's truly an angle of ours to say, how can we help society? Whether or not we can make the roads safer with automotives, or whether or not through our work we could find a cure for cancer, I think is a really big part of our company as well.
Right. And I think the other big part, which is a question, I mean, you came on board 5 years ago, and you had spent time at some wonderful companies in Microsoft, Texas Instruments, Cisco. What was it like when you came on? What did you think about the culture? What has surprised you about it? What were your...
Yeah, bring it back to the culture. I think one of the things of working at some of the large companies, and what probably drew me the most back there, sure. Spending time with Jensen, absolutely on day one, of the whiteboarding experience of him to map out what he saw as the future. The visionary is absolutely tremendous. But that resonates throughout the entire company. A company that is really, I'd say, just very down to earth. You walk in with a group of people that spend their entire life work, been focused on GPUs, essentially egoless, essentially just, I like the work I do. I love bringing great products to work. It's a place that you just can't find anywhere in the company. There's not a lot of bureaucracy. There's not a lot of form and substance. We're rather a flat organization. We actually don't have org charts. Right. Yeah, we kind of know who works for who, but we form groups to solve big problems. Yep. Intellectual honesty is, I think, probably one of the other key things that draws it, that just says, it's not about making a presentation. Let's be direct, we've got a problem, we've got to solve it. And it's a great place to see a tremendous amount of talent pulled together to do that.
And I'd say the other aspect of our culture is we like to use the term swarm. Yeah. We swarm on problems. I remember a few years ago, we introduced this concept of SOL, speed of light. And we use that concept to how do we get chips back from the fab all the way to the customer's hands and faster? How do we act for our customers at the speed of light? And that has become a big part of the culture. And the whole AI breakthrough, that was a swarming exercise by our research scientists and our hardware engineers and our software team. And so that's a big part of our culture.
Well, I think 25 years, it's a pretty big difference. But honestly, I get asked all the time, 5 years, did you know when you started? And I said, sure, I knew a visionary CEO, but to see what we have accomplished over that time, it's absolutely an honor, a privilege to work at the company, and we're actually thrilled to accept this award.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.